morning. This is the Alpha Female Lounge on Asake Online. My name is Pamela Mpofu and I'm your host. We're back again this week talking about more issues that affect young women in Matabeleland. On the 8th of March, annually, women across the globe celebrate Women's Day, a day that is set aside to celebrate and mark the achievements made by women in different sectors across the globe. Today on the show, we're going to be discussing the issue of gender equality as well as how we can break the bias. The theme for this year on Women's Day is gender equality for a sustainable tomorrow. On the show today is Zenani Masuku from AFRIBS, who is going to be chatting with us about gender equality issues in the Matabeleland region. Zenani, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Okay, so Zimbabwe comprises mainly of patriarchal cultures that hinder gender equality within the country. How best do you think that as young women we can try to rise up above that?
We need our men to support us. We all know that even when it comes to elections, the biggest voice that is usually heard is the men. And at home, when you're hearing when you're having the discussions around elections, it's usually the men in the house who decides what to do, who to vote for. Usually when the money comes in the home, a lot of times it's the men who voices out the most to say, what should we do with the money? As much as it's usually supposed to be the woman's role to say something. So having that kind of patriarchal culture where men feel like it's their voice or it's no voice at all. It's their say or there's no say at all. And it's that ego that we are trying to fight against, to say, no, we don't have to fight for us to be both okay with what we can both do, but we can work together. So that kind of a culture and that attitude that men have, I believe it's an attitude that needs to change, because once it changes, then we are both men and women, are both able to work well together to achieve whatever we want to achieve, to ensure that we both rise above whatever challenges we're facing.
Okay, and then you mentioned that we would like to have men support us. What about other fellow women? Because you find that sometimes women also are partakers in the patriarchy that happens within our communities.
Yes, I always laugh when I talk with friends about feminism, and I always say, it's like fighting a wrong with the wrong. For me, that's what I believe. I feel like it's for us to be able to both work well, we both have to respect each other, to respect each other's skills and in each other's ability to do what we can. Women equally need to support men, because when we're talking about gender, we're not talking about women. It's not women rights, it's gender rights, and gender is both male and female. That means we both need to work together to support each other. Men equally have dreams, men equally have ambitions, so we all need to work together to ensure that we both are happy in having to do what we want to do as a man or as a woman.
What's your take on the fact that the Zimbabwean constitution clearly states that any cultural practices, traditions that infringe on women's rights are null and void, but yet we still find practices like child marriage is still in existence and growing in large numbers?
Yeah, it's a negative thing that we're seeing happening, where on paper our constitution says really amazing things, really good progressive things, but when it comes to implementation, it's another story altogether. And it's really quite heartbreaking that we're not seeing our government having to go a step forward and really doing the most in ensuring that the constitution is seen being practiced, and it's not just something that we talk about all the time. So it's quite unfortunate that we still have issues such as child marriage is still happening, yet it's not constitutional. There are a lot of things that are not constitutional that are still happening, and we hope and only pray that as time goes on we can work together to ensure that progressive policies are implemented well.
All right. So equal educational opportunities are one of the first steps to attaining gender equality in the country. But we still find that in most parts, if you look at maybe rural Matabeleland and even in Bulawayo as well, you'll find that young girls are stripped of their right to finish their education because they now have to get married or they have to do certain cultural things. Why do you think that is?
I think we still have a long way to go in having to educate those in the rural areas, because I think such problems are usually found in people who live in the rural areas. But of course, we still find men and women who are parents in today's age who prefer to say the girl child is the one who should work after school, but then the boy child should not work, which I think is so absurd, because like Chimamanda Adichie once said, we need to teach both our boys and our girls to do work that benefits them both. A man has to eat. He needs to learn how to cook for himself. And man needs to live in a clean environment. Then therefore he needs to learn how to clean for himself. Having both men and women being educated, it's something that should benefit us. It's a right, it's an individual right. It's not about being a woman or being a man. It's something that should happen, because we all need to progress. But if I don't decide to get married, my life is not about marriage. I'm a woman, yes, but I don't have to get married. It's not set on stone. It's not constitutional to say a woman has to get married. So why should I be groomed and to grow up as a young girl to say my life has to just be about marriage, or it has to be about it has to be about my partner in the future? So I feel like, when we're talking about education, we should value the fact that we're individuals. We're not just female or male. We're individuals. And as individuals, we should have that right to be educated however we want to be educated. We should have that education right. And we should be able to be groomed to say, I'm an individual, aside from the fact that I'm a man, or aside of the fact that I'm a female, So it's something that we need more education on, and we need to change attitudes. I think it's about attitudes. It's really primarily about attitudes. We have the wrong attitudes. That's why I believe that a lot of people have, still that thinking of saying that my child who's a boy shouldn't do this, and my child who's a girl shouldn't do this. Therefore, I should prioritize the boy child more than the female child. And, from my observation over the years, I realized that the girl child is the one who actually takes care of the families more than the boy child. Yeah. We give priority to the boy child a lot. But the truth is the female child who takes care of not just her family, and because when she gets married, she takes care of the husband's family too. And the husband in his family will primarily be worried about taking care of the family, feeding the children, and his wife's needs. And he often might forget having to take care of the extended family. And it is the wife's duty most often to take care of both of the families. And yet, the irony of it all is that the priority is often given to the men. For them to be educated, and yet it's the female child, the girl child, who's doing the most when it comes to really taking care of families and everything like that.
Yeah, that is a really good one there. Looking at professional workspaces, women are subjected to gender inequality there. What do you think the men's role is in professional workspaces to foster gender equality?
I don't think it's a matter of talking about what's the role of the men. I think it's about the culture of the work environment. Yeah. It's about the culture of the work environment. What is the culture of where you're working? What does the HR say about the way you're supposed to work as both men and female? What is the culture like in terms of respecting both men and women as colleagues, not as female, not as men? What is the culture like in having to create safe spaces for both men and both women? For me, it's not about the role of the men. It's the role of the of the founders of the company or the organization, and largely the HR, who has to make sure that there's a culture where people are both respected. Men should naturally know that there are boundaries that are set. Women should know that there are boundaries that are set. It shouldn't be a matter of there's a man or a woman and a man should know this or a woman should know that. It should be both of them. What should they know? What should they both know, and what are the boundaries that are set that they both should respect?
All right, that makes a lot of sense. So one of the things that we have that's really now common in our society is gender-based violence. Do you believe that maybe the high rise in gender-based violence cases is stemming from gender inequality issues?
No. I think it's about attitude. the attitude that, because we're talking about gender, we're not talking about we're not talking about women-based violence, we're talking about gender-based violence. I think it's about attitudes, the level of respect, boundaries that are set, people having to recognize that we need to be both respected, that there is harm in words, there is harm in physical abuse, and that people should not go about having to express their anger and their emotions in harmful means, both women and men. So for me, it's about the attitude of the individual. And attitude stems from backgrounds as well. How were those people grown up to be, who influenced them? And it's about the influences, I think, that also, work on the attitudes of people. So it's not about gender discrepancies. It's more of individuals.
All right. I get you. So you're saying that irregardless of the fact that we could attribute gender-based violence cases to gender equality, in this case, it is not. It has nothing to do. It's more of an attitude that you have towards women that will propel you to be a perpetrator of gender-based violence. Yes, that's what you're saying?
Yes, that's what I think. I think it's about what you believe. It's the value system you have for yourself, the boundaries and respect. Because if I have boundaries, I should also learn to know that you have boundaries. If I get hurt and I'm pained by words or I'm pained by physical hurts, then I should know that you're also equally affected. I should be human enough to realize that my actions hurt. So it's about attitude, because women can equally be abusive. So it's not just about men, it's about individuals, personalities, attitudes of people. So that's what I believe.
All right, I totally understand you. You are still watching the Alpha Female Lounge on Asake Online, and today on the show we are talking about gender equality and how we can break the bias. Of course, we celebrated Women's Day on the 8th of March, which is a Tuesday in this particular week. In the studio today, I'm with Zenani Masuku, and we are discussing gender equality issues and how we can #break the bias. Okay, Zenani, so do you believe the gender mainstream mechanisms that we have in the country are effective as of now?
I think they're lacking. They're really lacking. But then we are trying. I will not downplay the efforts of civil society, the efforts of individuals who stand up and speak about gender and, the inequalities that are there and the abuse that is there. Radio stations all the time, we have the discussions streaming on our local radio stations. We are reading articles, we are on social media. People are making an effort to make sure that we are understanding about boundaries around gender inequality and the need to make sure that none of us feel downplayed or feel like our choices are taken away from us. Yes, I do see that there are some gender disparities that are existing, in that some more of the boy child gets more opportunities in certain settings than a girl child. But to be very honest, in this 21st century, 2022, I am seeing that the girl child is getting more opportunities than the boy child. And the boy child's needs are being neglected. We talk so much about girl rape, like women, young girls being raped, women being raped. We don't talk about boys being molested, and that is it's a silent rising issue. We don't talk about boys who are abused at home by step parents or even by their parents, saying, "Oh, you're a boy, so therefore you are able to do all the hard chores in the home." And yet they also, they also feel the pressure and they feel overwhelmed. The pressure of a boy child of, you need to grow up to be such and such a boy. You need to do this. You need to do that. You need to be strong. You can't cry. And we push aside the fact that they are human at the end of the day. When we say you can't cry, yet they're humans. They have tear glands just like women. They have feelings just like women, and yet we try and downplay that and try and make them into machines. I feel that's a gender disparity. It's just gender inequality, where we we value and mature the girl child, and we say your feelings matter, you matter, but we don't talk about the boy child. We understand that there is a gender inequality and that certain spaces have more men than women, but then at the end of the day, I think it's about attitudes. It's really about attitudes. In government, we have seen during our parliamentary talks where some men will say really uncalled for things towards women. At some point, there was one male in parliament who downplayed another woman's mental health and called her crazy. You know, we see those disparities. We see those unnecessary things that men do. And I believe they do it not because they're given more power. No, they do it because of the attitudes. And unfortunately, even as women, we empower them to have those attitudes because we are taught don't say anything, or you know, men are like that, or we are taught to just get used to it. And yet, is it really about getting used to it, or is it about changing attitudes?
Okay, I love the fact that you mentioned that we women also empower men with these attitudes. So how do you think we can now break this particular bias when it comes to the attitudes that men have of thinking they can speak to us anyhow, and we allow it and condone it by saying that's just how men are?
I believe in that saying that says a village is raised by a woman. Children are raised by women largely. And no, I'm not ignoring the part of the men, but I'm just saying largely it's the grandmothers, it's our mothers who grow us, who are there a bulk of times in our lives more than the men in our lives. And because of that, women are the ones, the mothers, the grandmothers, are supposed to teach the young men that no, you can't talk to a woman like that. You can't treat a woman like that. We have to have those conversations to say, if I hurt you, don't you feel pain? Then why should you do the same thing to the next woman or to the next person, despite the fact that they're a woman? You know, I believe that as women, we have a huge role to play. We can change the narrative ourselves. Instead of having to call men evil and blaming the large things on the men, let's be very honest as women. We are culprits in this game because we are the ones who are in charge of the boy child. With the narrative we speak into their lives is a narrative they will grow up into. So if they were going to watch both of their parents fighting, the mother should go to the boy child and say, you know, I know you see that me and your father fight a lot, but when you grow up, this is not the man you should be. You should be a man who is like this or like that. Empower and grow a narrative of positivity rather than of negativity. Don't say, don't allow your children to hear you say, umendo unjalo, or, you know, in English, marriage is like that. No, marriage should not be like that. I shouldn't be hurt in marriage. Marriage is supposed to be a joyful place for me. So the narrative we share with our children should change. It should really change. And it starts with us women.
I love the way you put it there. Like that is really just beautiful. As we celebrate Women's Month, what are some of the milestones that you really feel have been effective in putting a real positive change to gender equality?
I love that our constitution is very sparkly.
Very sparkly.
It's sparkly and nice. It's got all the things that should be said to make sure that women are in a great space. I also love the fact that we have so much of civil society speaking up and fighting for the rights of women and educating the women. So I think that's a great stride. I love that even in schools, there's the discussions and talks around gender equality and gender growth. So I see those as good strides that are happening. Yeah.
Okay. And where do you feel more work needs to be done? Because yes, we've seen a bit of change here and there, but where do you feel more work can be done when it comes to the mainstreaming mechanisms?
I think the role of the church should really emphasize attitude changes. The role of the church. We all know that in Zimbabwe, we love going to church. We love to pray.
Very much.
We love to pray. And our pastors and our leaders in the church have a huge role to play in the narrative we share in our homes. there's always that lovely verse that is like to share, that the church is like to share, to say, women, respect your husbands. The Bible equally says in that very verse that men love your women. And it also goes on to say, men, be mindful of how you treat your children, because you can impact them in the decisions that they make. And so I feel like the church has a huge role in how it helps us change the narratives in our homes, because a lot of families live by the word of the church elders. And I'm reminded of an incident when I was at my personal church, when I spoke up and I said, it's about time that we talked about divorce in the church. And it's about time we encourage women to leave spaces where they're not safe. Especially if the man is not changing. You have the church pastors going and talking to the husband, but the husband is just relentless and does not want to change at all. And the reason why I shared the whole aspect of divorce, I said, well, we have so many women in Londoloz who were pushed to the point of having to commit, really heinous crimes, because no one stood up for them. No one fought for them, and the husband never changed. We have women who have died in the hands of men, and women who have committed suicide because of the men who were abusive. I'm talking about abusive men here. And I remember I said to the church that I was like, I think it's about time we encourage women to divorce. And the church pastor was like, we cannot do that, because if we do that, then it's like us accepting gays in the church. And I'm like, wait, how did we get there when we're right here, And I realized that there's a narrative that also needs to change within the church pastors and the leaders.
Yeah.
Where they realize that, fine, if divorce is not okay, then what strategies can we implement in the church to ensure that husbands love their wives? And love doesn't come with a slap. Love doesn't come with violating words or violating boundaries. Love is respecting the fact that I cannot hurt this person beyond this. I cannot go beyond this and hurt that person. So I feel like churches have a huge role to play, and I feel like schools continue to have a huge role to play, and our mothers really have a long way to go with us. So they really, those areas for me are areas that need huge improvement.
Yeah, and it's very true, especially with religion, looking at how powerful religion is in this country. I mean, religion is so much power. So in closing, what are you, as an individual, as a young woman, celebrating right now? And how are you saying, I'm going to break the bias when it comes to gender equality?
I'm happy that I can walk around wearing whatever I want.
That's very true.
Though, of course, we still have people who want to step over that boundary. I'm happy that, and I'm happy to celebrate the fact that I can work, and I'm able to work on my ambitions and dreams, and I don't have to be a man to do it. I don't have to be recognized as a woman to do it, because the Constitution protects me, and every other woman is doing whatever they want to do. I feel like we've gone a long way. In Zimbabwe, I personally think that we have gone a long way in having to make sure that we are where we are as women, to have all these privileges that our mothers before us did not have, the privilege that they have today. So I celebrate the achievements of that.
Okay, which is a very big one, because I think from the 1900s to today, it's been a really big change that we've seen, though we still have a bit more work to do as everyone, like and the relevant stakeholders. Thank you so much, Zenani, for joining us today on the show. It was a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we've reached the end of today's episode of the Alpha Female Lounge, and we were talking to Zenani Masuku from the African Institute for ending violence, bullying, and suicide efforts. You can also interact with us on our social media platforms on what you think can be done to hashtag Break the Bias, as this is our theme for Women's Month globally, and women across the world are celebrating the marks that women have made in different sectors. Until next week, from me and the crew behind the scenes, goodbye and happy Women's Month.